Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. Brad here. So today I want to dive into Mohnish Pabrai's latest interview. It was with SumZero. It happened on April 13th, so 2 days ago from when this is being recorded, 2020. Now let's dive in. You guys may be familiar with Mohnish Pabrai. He's famous for bidding $650,000 at a charity auction to have lunch with Warren Buffett back in 2008. And he's my investment mentor. I watch all of his videos that are put out on YouTube. He does guest lectures a couple times a year at different universities. And this is just a wealth of knowledge. So let's dive into this email interview that Pabrai did a few days ago. So the interviewer asked, many public market investors have notoriously short time horizons. Do you think investors have sufficiently discounted 2020 earnings and shifted their focus to 2021? Now, Pabrai thinks people who are short-term investors aren't really investors. They're speculators. So Pabrai is looking at earnings, 5 to 10 years down the road when he's trying to decide if a company is a good investment or not. So what's happening now, what's going to be happening over the next year, even 2 years, is fairly insignificant when it comes to Pabrai's investing approach. He also mentions he doesn't run discounted cash flow valuations to figure out the intrinsic value of a business. If he can't do the math, on 5 fingers, on one hand, to decide if a company is a good investment or not, based on what their projected earnings are compared to the price, he's not interested. He needs an investment to hit him over the head with a 2x4 before he's interested. And then they ask, what happens to the markets if we get a second wave of COVID-19 before there's a vaccine? So, say in a month or two, the shelter at home order is lifted, people go back out to work, back into the community, and then, we get this spike in COVID cases again. So again, Pabrai comes back to the idea that we need to focus on what's happening in a particular business, okay? Is the business a good investment? When it comes to trying to predict what's going to happen in the market, what's going to happen with, this virus, they're too hard. Nobody knows. So it's a waste of time to focus energy there. We really need to dive in to individual businesses that we're considering investing in, and getting to know those businesses and, looking at the financials, understanding, the competence of management, and, to decide whether those companies are good investments. Forget about what interest rates are going to do. Forget about, the trajectory of this virus. Focus on what you can know or predict with some degree of accuracy and stay there. He also says, man is a very clever animal. He's been incredibly surprised by the human ingenuity he's witnessed in response to COVID-19 in the last few weeks. So he's optimistic about the track we're going to take with the virus. He thinks we'll be, 2 or 3 months from now, it'll be nearly gone. And within a year, we'll be 100% back to normal in terms of, business in the U.S. Which industries may be permanently affected? He says a lot of mom and pop restaurants will unfortunately go bankrupt. Small business, it's really tough to weather, conditions like this where they're just not bringing in money, because nobody's going out and buying things. He's been really impressed at what Fed and the Congress have done so far. So that's encouraging. He thinks, so there's a question, what are some societal implications you anticipate in the aftermath of the pandemic? He doesn't think there's going to be much change. He thinks this is the last pandemic we're going to see in our lifetimes. And we're going to learn things from it. You know, we're going to have access to ventilators and masks in a big way, and leaps in technology to allow for rapid containment of future viruses. He was asked, why do you consider COVID-19 to be a mild virus? He says, we've had viruses in the past with much higher growth factors and degrees of fatalities. Smallpox, Ebola. COVID-19 is quite tame relative to these things. You know, it did catch us flat-footed. You know, we weren't prepared with the number of hospital beds, ventilators, masks. But we do have businesses that are really scaling up to produce more of those. Testing. You know, testing is a big issue. We don't currently know who's carrying the virus. So how quickly we'll be able to roll out tests at an affordable price. You know, how many people can we test in a day? That's going to be hopefully something we're going to make massive strides on. Let's see. Do you foresee a shift back to value investing from passive investing as a result of pandemic-related market volatility? It says value investing is always a small minority pursuit. There's always going to be many more passive investors, many more index fund investors than there are stock pickers. And part of that, he says, is because very few humans can resist following the herd. And in order to do well as a stock picker, you know, you need to do things differently than the herd. Okay. Says he's very impressed by the various governors and federal government in the response to COVID. He gives a 9.5 out of 10 on government response to COVID. He thinks in about 2 or 3 months, like I said before, we'll be well on the recovery path. We will have incredible testing ability within 4 weeks or less. And obviously, once we have the mass rollout of testing capabilities, we can identify who has the virus, even if they're asymptomatic, and kind of keep them separate from others. So that's the idea there. What do you think of the sheer scale of the fiscal stimulus and monetary actions by the Fed? Are we digging ourselves into a deeper hole, or do you think these measures will provide the necessary jolt businesses and consumers need to get through the crisis? I give the Fed 10 out of 10 on their response. Amazing. Do you have any worry about inflation rising excessively, given all the money being injected into the economy? He says the superstar athlete Usain Bolt has stumbled and fallen. The first task is to get him up and running again. There are serious domino effects we have to avoid. We got the Great Depression because there were runs on banks and banks failed en masse. The backstops are vital. Inflation is a secondary consideration right now. We need to bring out the biggest bazooka. Helicopter the money down from a zillion choppers. So Pabrai's whole thing here is we got to stop the bleeding. Worry about inflation later. We were also told we get massive inflation after the Fed pumped trillions into the economy and Congress spent over $1 trillion in 2008 and 2009. It's been 11 years since then. Where is the inflation? So, you know, it's not a foregone conclusion that because of the current stimulus bill, we're going to have hyperinflation or anything like that. They ask, what are your 3 favorite stocks currently as long-term buys? You know, Pabrai tends not to answer questions like that, and you know, he didn't hear it either. So the interviewer, you know, pivoted a little bit. without specifically saying what your favorites are there any stocks in particular that you think of as long-term compounders or value plays which you think warrant close re-examination due to COVID-19? In other words, do any great businesses come to mind which you think long-term investors could buy at a significant discount to intrinsic value? So here Pabrai offers two different companies. So Carriage Services, CSV, and Live Nation, LYV. Carriage Services is in the funeral services business. Now, Pabrai got interested in the funeral services business also back during 9/11. You know, you have all of these fatalities, and as morbid as that sounds, you know, the funeral services business is not going to be hurt financially when there's a situation where there's increased deaths, okay? Same thing is happening now. The price of Carriage Services, which is a funeral services business, is down 45% from its peak. Obviously, that shouldn't be the case if you're purely looking at the financials. Then you've got Live Nation. They own Ticketmaster. You know, there's a concert that takes place somewhere in the world every 15 minutes that flows through Live Nation. It's been cut in half since its February peak. Now, since Pabrai thinks things are going to get back to normal within a year, you know, if you're looking at a 50% discount on Live Nation, that could be a pretty powerful compounder to look at. So Pabrai has his eye on those. He's not ready to buy yet, but he's keeping an eye on it if it continues to drop in the next, you know, couple months, 6 months, a year. Any final thoughts? This too shall pass. Humanity dodged this bullet very well. It's interesting he's talking about how we've already dodged it. And we'll make sure there are no future pandemics that create the mayhem this one did. So his whole thought about that is we got lucky. We were caught flat-footed. We didn't really have the resources lined up to properly address this. But because of the response at the government level, local governments, federal government, we took it seriously. Shelter in place. You know, people did the necessary things, have done them so far, that we've avoided this massive spike in cases. Clearly, we've had a spike in cases. We were having exponential growth for a while, but Pabrai believes that we're going to be able to get this thing under control in the very short term. So we got lucky. But because of that, you know, we're going to learn a lot from it and have the resources in place when the next thing like this does occur. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this latest interview from Mohnish Pabrai. If you like things like this, if you want to see more things like this, let me know in the comments. You know, Pabrai does do the occasional interview, probably every month or two. So, you know, I'm happy to dive into future interviews. If you want to see more of that, let me know. So that's all I got, guys. Hope you enjoyed this. Hit the thumbs up button if you liked it. Hit the subscribe button to see more videos. I'm putting one out every day related to, you know, investing and compounding your returns in the stock market. So have a great day. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.